Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Strategy Game Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Shippey, and today we have a great family friend, Rick Maffett. Rick, hello. Thanks for coming on.
Howdy. Thank you for having me.
So, Rick, tell us a little bit about your background, like where you came from. You're one of the few that was born and raised in this area, which is the Palm Beach Gardens area. There's not many originals, OGs. So tell us like your story of growing up and kind of your career path so far.
Yeah, so my name's Rick. I'm your friend. I'm a husband to a wonderful wife, Corey, and dad to three amazing daughters, Ellie, Esther, and Eden. And I was not born here. So
I thought
I was
you
born,
were.
no, I was born in Atlanta,
Wow, I
moved
should have
down
worked in my
here,
intro. When did you move here?
1990, so I was 6.
Okay, all right.
Um,
All right.
I grew up here though, so I've been here long before most of the stuff that's down here. So
Yes.
my dad moved us down here to start a company with my uncle, and grew up in an entrepreneur family. Business was our life. Grew
Yep.
up, there's videos of me catching boards out of saws when I was 7 years old. Uh, every summer, sweeping the floor of sawdust. Um, so I grew up here in the business. Went to high school, did all the leadership stuff there, played football, went away to college, went to the biggest school I could find in the state of Florida so I could get away from small town life, and uh, really just loved my college experience, loved high school. Moved, had full intentions of never moving back to South Florida. I was a finance major in college and fully intended to move up and be a finance guy in New York. And dad called me
I
a
never
couple of
knew that.
weeks. Yeah,
That's great.
I was a music theater major first, and then
What? Okay. All right. I got to see some photos, videos of this.
no. So I quickly learned that I didn't want to be a music theater major because I didn't want to wait tables. So, but yeah, fully intended to move to New York, and then dad called me a few weeks before graduation and said, "Hey, I'd love to have you in the company." So I came back down here, worked at the company for about 5, 6 years, and started getting involved in my local church again, and started serving in outreach ministries, and uh, never intended to make that my vocation, but somewhere along the way, God called me into ministry, and I spent 12 years on staff at a local church here. I met one of my best friends and mentors, Bill Tumblety there, who taught me pretty much everything I know about leadership, and served on staff there for 12 years in various roles, from the missions pastor, and then my last role there was the director of multi-site. So the church had 13 locations at the time, and so my role was basically equipping all of our campus teams for everything they are called to do. So whether it's weekend services or hosting funerals, whatever it was that they were called to do. So my job was to make sure they had what they needed to do that.
Yeah, and by local church, I mean, so for people listening, it's Christ Fellowship, which is a very
Yeah.
large, well-known church. So yes, for us it's local, but it's a major operation. They do things with excellence, and I know that you were a big part of that. So and then tell us about the latest transition for you, because you've just walked through. I mean, you're still in, but you've really walked through a transition from now leaving that era and stepping into a new era. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So it's been 2 years now since I left Christ Fellowship. It's a long story in and of itself, but it was amazing God story in that. So uh, in the midst of that, me feeling a sense of transition, dad called me again out of the blue and just basically said, "Hey, I'm going to meet my lawyer tomorrow with a plan um, to leave, to sell the business. And I just figured I'd call you one more time before I put it up for sale." And I that's when I finally told him, "Hey, I'm actually feeling like I'm probably closing out my time at Christ Fellowship." And um, so I decided to make the move back to our family business. So it's been 2 years. It's been a long journey for 2 years. My dad has led this business in every facet for 34 years now. And so he's in the journey of learning how to release and to
Yeah.
um, learning how to release and to trust. And so it's not something that he's done historically and had to do historically because he's carried it all. But we also have learned that we've got different skill sets, completely different skill sets.
Mhm.
We usually land at the same place, but we get there very different ways. And so learning how to do that and doing that as somebody who's led at pretty high levels through different areas, and learning to trust each other and to communicate with each other effectively. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
been a
it's
journey.
pretty crazy. You can like grow up in the same house and you can be a father and son or whatever that is. And you can realize that there are areas that maybe you don't completely trust each other, that trust just hasn't had to be built in the same way. So
Yeah.
it's just like a completely different story. I want to go back a little bit though. How did you know that it was time to leave, that it was time to step away and make that transition? Because I think a lot of people right now that I've talked to are sensing this like shift or transition or to go a different way or a new way. And so what did that process look like for you? Were you sure? Did you not know?
So I mean, my story is pretty crazy in that, I mean, so God woke me up in the middle of the night for 2 weeks straight, basically saying your season's done. I've
Wow.
got something new. And so I kind of walked by myself in that for a while. And
Wow.
I was just like, okay, I
Yeah.
don't, that's stupid because I really love what I do. I'm really good at it. And
Right.
um, I, I was basically trying to ignore it. So finally, my wife said, I was grumpy because it was every day at 2 o'clock in the morning, God would wake me up and
So
I
you
was
were
up. So
tired. You were
I was
tired after
tired.
2 weeks.
Exactly. And so Corey basically said, like, what's going on with you? Like you're a mess. And so finally I told her and she basically said, yeah, I know that. That's God told me that back in December.
Wow.
And I was waiting for you to get there.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, well, that's kind of crazy. So then I basically asked her, well, what do you think I should do? She said, well, I think you need to talk to Bill, who's my boss, and didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And basically delayed that conversation for another couple of weeks. And then finally, we met one day and he, he basically asked me the same question, what's wrong? I'm like, this is what I think. And he's like, yeah, I know, that's fine. God told me that on New Year's Eve when I was praying for you. So
That is
I'm
crazy.
not. Yeah. So, I mean, mine was pretty clear cut. There were several people who
Yeah.
confirmed it. The plan to come back to Coastal that wasn't something that I was like thinking about. Again, that dad kind of called me out of the blue in the midst of all this and said, this is what I'm doing. And
Mm.
I just wanted to make one more call before I did it.
Crazy
Because
that
he
that
had
was
called me.
all aligned. Like that just all happened.
That's it. So he'd called me several times over the years, begging me to come back, and I've told him I'm not interested. Like this is what
Yeah.
I'm supposed to do. And so this is the first time in 12 years that I basically said, hey, I'm not ready to say no now.
Wow.
So we talked about it for a while, and so that's where I am today.
That's so cool. What an amazing story. I mean, it's definitely faith building for those out there that are like vacillating or not knowing, or maybe some that are sensing a shift or hearing some things but not acting on it. Like God has a funny way of repeating it if you if you're not getting it the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it took me 2 weeks of sleep deprivation to finally open up about it.
Yeah.
And then once I brought my wife into the conversation, it was immediately a burden lifted off my shoulders. And then, I mean, it was probably a 4-month transition out of Christ Fellowship. And so, yeah, we're going on this April was 2 years. So,
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so this last 2 years, I know it's been such a journey, right? All the roller coaster. But what do you think as you kind of recap so far? What has that looked like for you and like challenges, also maybe like triumphs or wins that you're seeing? How would you recap that?
um, I would recap it with we have we basically changed everything about our business in the last 2 years. we've taken steps that are really drastic. We've installed some systems that we've never had. We've had systems, but we never truly aligned them across the whole organization. So one of the first things I did was I purchased some software that Thad had been talking about for years. And finally I just said, we have to do this. Which has basically challenged everything that we've done and every system that we've had, and having to look at it through a different lens.
Wow.
So the challenge has been letting people follow along in the journey and not just impose strict, this is what we're doing. It's helping people to see the value and carry it out themselves, and be a part of the decision-making process, as opposed to kind of top-down authoritarian decision-making. So I would basically say the challenge has been that. The triumph has been seeing it come to fruition. We're 2 years into this process, and I would say in the last 6 months, we're finally seeing the real benefits out of it. So, and it's, like I said, it's made us look at every single aspect of our business and given us visibility into things that we've never seen. And so it's brought about hard conversations that we haven't been having for 34 years. And now we get to have them because it's plain as day. So
What a great way to say it. You get to have them. That's so positive.
we get to have them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you've got two dynamics going on at the same time. And like I worked with my dad for quite a number of years, so I'm familiar with some of that, but it's like you've got that relationship with your dad, and then you guys having conversations and building trust in a different way than like, growing up with that father-son relationship. And then you've also got changing all the systems in the business and getting team buy-in. And so like those two lanes have to run, in parallel. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's like a race where one is behind the other, and then, vice versa.
Well,
But
and I always say, like, I put an analogy of I'm putting on different hats. So this hat, I'm wearing this hat. This is my vice president hat. Um, and this is the vice president talking to you as a part of a business conversation and not your son. So, and then I have the son hat that I put on. We've done a really good job of separating work and family recently. It has not been like that my whole life. We live like it's a small business family, so you know
yeah,
that. But we in this season, I think my dad has recognized that we can't always talk business, and he enjoys time with his grandkids and seeing them. And when we're together as a family on the weekend, it's one thing, and during the week we can butt heads and challenge each other. But it doesn't. It's something that I think we finally have landed at a pretty good place. And I think it's those honest conversations with vice president versus son versus somebody who's hopefully going to take over the business someday. So it's recognizing that you have different roles and different responsibilities in those roles, and knowing which role you're in at which moment is
yeah.
important.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that is good. Knowing which role you're in at which moment. So that really takes like great intentionality, because if you're not really paying attention, then those things can kind of fall by the wayside, right? So those intentional like rhythms and paying certain mind to the moments, I'm sure have helped a lot.
Yeah, and not getting, I think, trying to avoid offense, and
Mm,
knowing that if he's worked up about something or I'm worked up about something, it's let's keep it focused on what it is and the topic at hand, as opposed to taking personal offense or trying to get upset about stuff.
yeah, that's really good. We talk about like the weeds in the way, in the book when it's talking about all those things, like all the things that can get in the way and trip us up. So, have you guys ever had to stop and like work through something that seems to be like a past issue or past like woundedness? And have you seen it connected or standing in the way at all of working through business issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they were very involved with us in my 12 years at Christ Fellowship. So he's seen me lead in different ways. And so I think he's had to recognize that I'm a different leader than I was 18 years ago when I first came on
Yeah.
staff at Coastal.
Yeah.
So and I'm a different person. I mean, I'm 40 now, so it's
Right. It's different.
yeah, I'm not a 25-year-old kid who thought I knew everything. And breaking out spreadsheets to solve problems. I've recognized that it's most things are people problems, and navigating people is a different thing than navigating data.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. What have you learned only through time that you would tell others earlier in their journey? I mean, I think you just said it, but is there anything else you said? Like it's a people problem when you were 25 trying to solve things through spreadsheets. And I probably did that too, for sure, in my 20s. So we could
Yeah.
definitely relate to that. And then you realize it's more relational. Like it's all about seeing the people and working with them together. But anything else like you would give those that are in a season of transition, trying to discern what's next, you know,
Um, I
advice?
would say prioritize your family. I think that one of the things that Bill taught me over the years is that there's always going to be another director of multi-site. There's always going to be another president of Coastal Millworks if you do it right. And so really recognizing that your family is your top priority. And that includes, for me, it's working with my family. So making sure that the family relationship is intact and is healthy. And that transition period is just recognize that it's vaporous. At some point, it's going to go away, and there will be another transition, whether it's to another business or off this earth. I mean, there's
Right.
always going to be, you always need to be working to replace yourself and um, to really just be open-handed with what you got. I would say leaders lead. So let the people who are working with you lead. And if you're coming into a new situation, recognize that there are people in the business who are already doing things and you don't know everything. You don't have all the answers. Ask more questions than answers you give, because you don't know anything. And and the other thing is choose which hills you want to die on.
Ooh,
Like
it's a good one.
there's if you die if you die on every hill, you're just going to be dead.
Yeah.
So choose the battles you want to fight, give your people clear guidelines on what you want, what you want the outcome to be as opposed to how they get there.
Mhm.
So that's really it.
Yeah, that's really good. And tell us a little bit about what you guys do. I mean, you made our front door and it's really fabulous. And everyone who ever walks in our house says this is the most amazing front door ever. But I know you guys also do like large commercial accounts as well.
Yeah, so I mean, our business is we're ultra high end architectural millwork company. So we have lots of different product groups that we can produce. So I mean, we used to pride ourselves in saying, if you can build it out of wood, we can build it. And so we have, which is also a fault of ours, and that we have so many different ways of doing things and so many different rabbit trails that we can run down. But our primary business is ultra high end oceanfront estates. We do houses that are usually 30, $40 million and up. And so we handle all areas of their woodworking needs. So working with general contractors and architects and designers from around the world to come up to bring their vision to reality. So it's people business ultimately. We just
It's a
do it with wood.
people business. Yeah. And our house doesn't qualify. So we're just really grateful to get in on that friend favor there.
You guys get friend
That's
favors.
well, Rick, thank you so much for coming on. I know there's so much wisdom shared here, and obviously we'll link to your company in the show notes. And thanks so much.
You got it. Thank you.